Hello, Justin here. I'm full of shit. Uh, you know, Normally that's just in the metaphysical sense. I am uh, learning in what it's like to be post-op after going under general anesthesia, which is an experience everyone should try at least once. And if you're really lucky, you wake up. And after waking up, you realize, boy, are my bowels compacted. Um, so yeah, it's been a eventful 24 hours between me and my private time. Jesus Christ. But also just launched right into this. I had a surgery. I previewed it last time when I talked about my turbinates, my big old fucking things inflaming my face. I, I was wondering if I was having like rosacea or something. But now I'm looking at my nose and it looks less red. So it's just like my low level inflammation of 24/7. That's gone because my turbinates are now a new slim fit. Ladies are stopping me on the street being like, whoa, look at you, boy. And I'm like, hey, man, just just how God made me, plus a few improvements. So yeah, I Becky very kindly took me to the surgical center. Had a great doctor, whole care team. Got to meet like half a dozen people, and then get pumped full of drugs, and then embarrass myself in front of half a dozen people. But apparently, I'm very endearing. I'm. It's one of those times in your life when you go, if you ever get surgery and have to go under like the heavy drugs, the good stuff. It helps if you're the happy drunk sort, as opposed to the angry drunk one imagines. Because I just kind of get affectionate. There's worse ways to be when one's under the influence, I think. But yeah, it was really stressful going into it, just because I have a fear of the unknown, fear of all the sorts of stuff that could happen. Even if they're like low probability things, I think this, being a control freak, the sense that you're completely out of control, and then you're gonna wake up and it's like your body will have been loaned for a little bit. Guess like that Joss Whedon show Dollhouse, but hopefully with, I was gonna say less penetration, but like only nostril penetration in this particular. And I guess I was intubated, so that's 3 out of 7 holes right there. Anyway, just launching right in. That it was a success. My turbinates are smaller now. And even though when I say I'm full of shit, I'm coming out both ends because my nose, which I might sound a little nasally, like I don't know, like I imagined how Colin Malloy, the front man of the Decemberists, how he sounds in his own head, just because he seems to be able to sing out of his nostrils. Fuck's sake. Yeah, I've got just it's like when you move into a new house and or you just remodeled, if you've ever had that experience, and there's construction dust is the colloquialism for it, but it's just like shit everywhere, right? Like all the baseboards have like just dust and stuff, and it gets into everything, kind of like the like sand, like if you just dragged in like a lot of sand, except you could pay to have it deep cleaned, and it could look good for 5 minutes, and you could feel like, yeah, we finally cleaned up after construction, and then a day passes and you're like, where'd all this new dust come from? It's like it's in the bones of the house. And it takes several, attempts, several cleanings to kind of work through it all. And so here I am 5 days later, after the surgery, and still it's just a lot of stuff up there. The sinuses are a whole winter wonderland of this cavernous realm inside this gigantic cranium I have. And it's does cranium refer to the whole skull, just the brain part? Anyway, I hello, hi. This is Breaking Change. This is version 48. Closing in on major version 50, which I think is the silver anniversary. Title of the episode is Coil Whine. And don't get too excited because it's not the kind you can drink. Yeah, so one more gross thing. There might be more gross things, because bodies are disgusting. I woke up from the anesthesia. The doctor greeted me. He was smiling because he just had some fun just doing his favorite thing of cutting up human flesh. And while I tried to communicate for the first time, I coughed up like a big chunk into like they'd given me a bag to like a like a biohazard bag to just like kind of cough into. And I was like, whoa, what was that? And he's like, oh, that was just some meat. You're gonna cough some of that up. You're just gonna cough up meat. It's like I don't want to think about it that way, but is it like calf liver? Do you just dust it with some flour, pan fry it maybe? Oh God. So yeah, turbinates. The only thing that I regret that I wish I could have somehow done is see what it looked like, just to have a better, because it's there's apparently just so much room for activities inside of one's head. Visualizing that space is bizarre to me because I always thought that heads were relatively dense. It's sort of like you see an Easter bunny chocolate your whole life, and you're always like, man, I wish I got an Easter bunny at Easter, like one of those big fucking Easter bunnies, and you're like, that would be awesome. It would last me for weeks. And then you finally, like, your mom gives you an Easter bunny, or you finally save up your shekels and you buy an Easter bunny, a chocolate Easter bunny. And then you realize it's fucking hollow. And you're like, what the fuck? I guess that's a way it could be. It never occurred to me because, like, if I was designing an Easter bunny, it would be solid fucking chocolate. Yeah, but, I knew it was a success right away. I was breathing through gauze in my nostrils because you're all kind of like plugged up at first. And there's a lot of blood and yada yada. But like even with all of those obstructions, I was breathing better than through my unobstructed nose previously, with the itty bitty room left for air after those gigantic turbinates. This is the show that has mentioned turbinates more than probably any other in the history of podcasting, and so so it was a huge success. I've got so much more air there. In fact, last night I was congested, like literally congested, now that I've moved on to the mucus phase of whatever's happening up there. And it was pleasant. I was still able to sleep. I was snoring a little bit, but like I wasn't having panic attacks. I wasn't literally unable to breathe. I wasn't, blowing a nose and then having nothing come out because there's nowhere for anything to fucking go. It was just, I was like, is this what normal people feel like when they're congested? It's not like a panic-inducing state of being, because this is like my experience since I was 4 is being goddamn terrified of getting sick, because I just end up asphyxiating myself because I'm too goddamn stupid to breathe through my mouth when I'm unconscious. Until and unless I'm literally dying, in which case I just wake up. So yeah, congestion, not as bad as I thought. I'm smelling new things. I could smell for the first time, that like the fresh paint in the house that's 4 years old now, I can still smell it, apparently. I could only smell it for the first month when we moved in. Smelling like products that the cleaners use when they clean the home. Like I walked into the bathroom, I was like, what's that smell? Yeah, it's just so goddamn, it reminds me of, my friend Zach, went to a middle school, high school with him. And I learned that he had a pretty major, like a significant prescription lens for his eyes, like thick, Coke bottle glasses. And the story that he told was always really fascinating to me in the child mind sense of, what if my blue looks different from your blue kind of sense? He said no one had ever tested his vision appropriately until he was like in 4th fucking grade, 5th grade, like old enough to have acclimated to the fact that he couldn't see shit. And I was like, man, how did to be that long, right? Like obviously literacy, and it must have been so much of a struggle. And he's like, no, it wasn't a struggle at all, because like I just thought that the world was fuzzy for fucking everybody. And I was like, damn, that's kind of profound. And then he sees it, and then that moment where he can see shit, he's like, what the fuck, parents? Like, this is what it's supposed to look like? God damn it. You know? He got way better at soccer after that, I'll say. Go figure. But I was thinking about Zach this week, because it's like, man, that's kind of what this feels like. It's like, this is breathing? Wow. This is really great. I need even less sleep than usual. I woke up in the morning, I don't feel like a bucket of assholes. So that's pretty cool. So that's been pretty exciting. And now I've moved on to the, acclimating to my new life phase. I'm divesting of all of the contraptions and services, the in-app purchase for the snore detection, that's gone. The air quality, air purifier in the bedroom, that's fucking out of there. The having to run a fan to exist, that's no longer the case. Nasal dilators that go inside the nose to spread the nose out so that I can breathe. Apparently acting as buttresses against the turbinates from inside out. Those are gone. So are the breathe right strips, the things that you tape over your face. Sprays. No more Nasacort, no more Flonase, no more prescription fucking sinus, spray shit. That's my drawer is suddenly, my bedtime routine is back down to like one fucking thing. That's pretty nice. The allergy, I had a immunotherapy. I was taking, allergy drops under my tongue every morning, just on a hope and a prayer that maybe what was really happening was we've got all these trees behind the house, and it's like maybe I'm allergic to the pollen or cypress or whatever. And I test that I am a little bit allergic, but like I got a feeling like the turbinates were doing the heavy lifting here. So I got retested from them, nothing major flagged, and so I asked for a refund, and Windley, WYNDLY, which is like an online immunotherapy service with real doctors, they seem like really good, because I asked for the refund, and within an hour, they pro rata refunded me $900 of the $1,200 in the annual subscription within an hour, and sent me the test results for my own posterity. So, yeah, my life just got a lot simpler. It's way nicer to fix the systemic thing at the root cause. I mentioned last time around that I was building a gaming PC, or assembling the parts to build a new gaming PC, as is my predilection every couple of years. I just kind of go through a series of stages of FOMO, I guess, as like graphics technology improves, or as like the newest AAA games start to look like assholes on my current gaming rig. And I was kind of at that point. I got the whole parts list. I'll share it here in the show notes. Most people aren't going to care, but like, it was a small form factor build. It is now complete. It was a success. I've got just top line stuff. CPU is the AMD 9800X3D, so it's considered to be right now the best one for gaming. The GPU, probably top of the line, considered to be the best, 5090. So big beefy motherfucker. It's the Asus ROG Astral Overclock Edition, and that fucker costs like $3,400, which is insanity. But when you look at like all of the other ones, even the cut rate ones being like $2,700 for like the bottom tier of the board makers, I was like, I don't know, you in for a penny, in for a fucking pound, I guess. And this one, the reason I got that one in particular is it has 4 fans, so it can suck in a lot of air, and that's really handy because I'm looking at this PC here, and it's about the size of a. I should have had a better analogy preloaded. What are you about the size? I was gonna say about a bread box. It's larger or smaller than it's. I don't know, man. It looks smaller than the smallest Power Mac ever was. I don't know. I don't have good frames of reference for this shit. It's about twice the size of a traditional toaster. It's small. It's the size of a GPU with metal around it is the answer, I guess, to the question. Took some 3D printed parts to get it all to cram in there into this nice little grater style case. Yeah, it was a 2.5 day job to assemble that thing because I fucking suck at visual spatial skills and I had to do everything 4 times to get stuff fit in right. And then miraculously, Christmas miracle, I plugged it in and it all kind of just worked. No big issues, no having to tear it all apart again to put it together again. I ran it. Everything ran like a dream. Put Windows on it. Spent like 5 hours beating the ugly out of Windows like one does and going through BIOS settings. Having ChatGPT Pro available to consult for like what I should set for every BIOS setting and how to handle things like undervolting and fan curves has been remarkable. Even during the assembly process, every time I had a question, sending it pictures and stuff like it really, ChatGPT isn't the best at OCR. It's not the best at image recognition right now. And we'll talk more about that later. But it was so helpful. Because before I would just be like, well, I guess I'll just never figure that out again. And then never open the BIOS again and realize my RAM is running at half speed or something. So it's a great example, yet again, of the best use case for LLMs is helping you with shit that you know less than the median person knows about that shit. So compared to most gaming PC enthusiasts, I'm a Johnny-come-lately who swoops in every couple of years, builds a thing, swoops out, forgets about it. Great example of a use case where, hey, LLM, just tell me what like the middle of the curve normcore gaming PC enthusiast would do in this situation, and I'll start with that as my default because I don't have any fucking opinions. And so that's gone really well. That's been really fun. The only problem is you put this thing together, right? And it's sort of like it's so small it feels like how it scratches, I think, the same itch. Because when you look at the SFF, the small form factor PC community, there's habitual builders. Like they build a lot of these things. I don't know if they do it on contract or for fun, or if they just tinker with their kit a certain number of times and they keep rebuilding and optimizing. I'm sure there's a little bit of everything. Yeah, I think it scratches the same itch that for like several generations ago, building a ship in a bottle would have, right? It's not quite to the point of using tweezers to get a mast up, but it's pretty close, especially when you start to look at like, hey, I need slimmer fans. Like these 140 millimeter fans are too thick to fit my cabling in here. So like I need to get slimmer fans, but nobody makes an M4 screw that's like less than 25 millimeters. And I only have, like now 12 millimeters of clearance. And so they're talking about dremeling down screws and then reattaching heads, like it's ridiculous shit. Fortunately, I was able to spare myself most of that nonsense. My friend Eric came through in a big way and 3D printed a whole bunch of nonsense that for whatever reason did not come with the case. You buy the case, it's $300, and then it shows up and then it suddenly like, hey, if you want this to work, here's the parts list of STL files that you need to print. I'm like, what the fuck is going on? Oh, right, the problem. I haven't heard this during normal gameplay or operation, but I ran a couple benchmarks. And right out of the box, when you peg the CPU on this thing and the GPU and the PSU, the power supply, one of those is experiencing coil whine, as in I got a whining coil, as in some induction of some electricity and electromagnetism is causing a resonance either inside of itself or with the case that just whines. Just a high pitch, low level, just constant whine. It sounds like a scratch almost. It is not conducive to a relaxing time playing video games. And even with headphones on, it is still audible. And so I of course ask my friend ChatGPT like what's going on. It informs me that there's a known expression for this called coil whine. Again, I'm still just imagining a really fun siphon style wine distribution thing that I could drink from at like a Cooper Hawk or fancy wine place, not that, but like coil whining and I went on the Discords immediately and the Reddits and you search for this phrase and you realize pretty much every small form factor builder, people building with 5090s regardless of the size, using these new power supplies that are over 1,000 watts. All of these people are like, oh yeah, the coil whine really sucks. It's this hardware lottery. If you don't want coil whine, you got to keep returning them and then rebuilding your fucking kit until one doesn't whine anymore. And I'm like, are you fucking serious? Like, fortunately, I do have the Amazon return window until like January 31st, so it's not like an urgent concern, except for the fact that all the prices keep going. I set price alerts for everything I bought, being like, well, surely the prices will go down over Black Friday. They did not. In fact, most of them are up on this already ridiculously expensive build. So thanks, Trump, for fixing inflation. Another nice little thing is I had the idea that because I mostly game from my theater in the other room, sometimes it doesn't like to wake up via USB keyboards. Like I have to go over and press the machine. I had the idea of actually getting a Wake on LAN application. So for my iPad, I now have a shortcut or a widget on the home screen that just does nothing other than send a magic packet to wake up the gaming PC. And it actually works for some reason where USB does not. And I'm not gonna investigate further as to why that is. But I'm really grateful that like now I can hit a button and wake that PC up from pretty much wherever it is, even when it's in a deep sleep. So that's pretty neat. And that about does me for life stuff. I don't know what kind of stamina I'm going to have today because my nose is pretty full and I'm still recovering from the surgery. But I'm feeling good. I'm glad to be here. I've been quarantining. I've been home alone for the most part for since Tuesday, playing a lot of video games, trying to like slow down, pace of life, relax, have fun. Maybe even make a habit of it. Especially now because of what we're going to talk about next as we follow up. Apart from the bed rest, one reason that I've got suddenly more time on my hands is that I have called Posse Party, the application that I've been building for most of the year, on and off, not in earnest. I'm ready to call it done enough. I had gotten to the point where I was really polishing the pewter. I was really just kind of like going above and beyond for no real reason to kind of fix up little type like corners and edges for a while. And the hang up, the reason that I'd been in this sort of state of arrested development with how to release it, twofold. One, really deciding and committing like what model am I going to use. I don't want to host this myself. I don't want to like have some just open source it and then have some other company build a product around it. But I do want to get it out the door before the end of the year. And enough people email me saying, hey, this would be a life-changing thing to be able to do. Like to have my blog just go to all the social media so I can set it and forget it and then not be hooked on the apps. And that was the reason I made it for myself. It's the reason I implemented it for Becky. And if you're somebody who wants that too, I wanted you to be able to have it. So I wanted to get it out the door, but the problem was like once I decide not to host one version of this thing on Heroku, I have no experience with other ways of distributing server-side applications. I have no Docker experience. I have avoided anything that smells like DevOps for 10 years. Longer. I was going to say imposter syndrome. Like I just have incompetence. I don't know how to do it right. And I have a level of quality for like developer experience that is my standards are too high to just like, hey, here's a Docker file, go figure it out. Because I'm the first user of the thing, and then step 2 is go figure it out for myself, and I'd be like, well, fuck, what do I do? So what I wound up doing was, again, in consultation with ChatGPT, because and GPT Codex Max or whatever, because it knew so much more than me, because I was a complete neophyte when it came to Docker stuff. I used it and iterated on sort of, hey, I want to have all of these really nice scripts that kind of come for the ride. So you go to posseparty.com now, POSSE party.com. It's a simple little one-pager. There's a setup script at the bottom. On your server, you run the setup script, and it'll do all of the Docker shit for you. It'll pull it down, the image. It'll get it up and running in containers. I don't know, Docker shit. It'll have a directory that it creates full of shell commands, including things like bin/upgrade, so you can get the latest release from my GitHub repo, from GitHub container registry, and pull that down, and then have it refresh all of those setup scripts, for example. Bin/console to open a Rails console, bin/bash so that you can open a shell environment terminal inside of the image, or inside the container. Backup and restore, so you could schedule automated backups and restore things from the command line or from SSH. It's very convenient. It's exactly what I need. All of the functions that I would have wanted to replace myself are now kind of like available there. I don't know if other Docker-based apps are like this. I would suspect not. And then everything, of course, is configurable in a generated .env file as environment variables. And so reasonable defaults are all set for you, and anything can be filled in to configure it, including like a dozen different mail providers, because it turns out that a lot of cloud hosts block SMTP for sending email. So that's the basic situation. That's where we landed. I think it's a good spot. I'm going to keep iterating on it here and there. I've got a few different features I still want to implement, a couple different channels, additional like social platforms I want to be able to publish to. It needs more documentation. I started work on that yesterday, just a little bit. So 5 of the 8 platforms now, if you go to that homepage, they'll click through and you'll show you a guide of how to get your own API keys for those platforms. I'll probably also do a DigitalOcean specific guide, because that seems to be the easiest one just to kind of get up and running. And maybe I'll do additional guides of other kind of hosting providers for step-by-step instructions on how to set up a machine and, get it going. I want to make it as easy as possible for people who've never self-hosted a thing before to self-host this thing. And we'll see where we get. So the documentation story is a little bit weak, but herein lies the rub, where even though it's available non-commercially for free, I have gotten a couple of inquiries already just in the first day or two asking about a commercial license to use it commercially. And so it's sort of like they called my bluff. I wasn't anticipating getting that so quickly. So now I got to figure out, what does that even mean? Like, what, do I want to put together a contract and like, price it based on whatever the fuck? So I got to figure that out for sure. But apart from people contacting me saying, hey, can we give you money somehow? I don't have any impulse to really market this. I spent a long time on it, mostly for me, mostly for Becky, kind of for you. If you benefit from it, great. But then, I don't know. I don't like, what do I have to gain by like going and telling the universe, hey, everyone get on the Posse Party train? I'm not like a goddamn evangelist of the open web. I don't really care that most people are just addicted to social media. Like, I know, like, if I could snap my fingers and get them like, out of the trance of doom scrolling, I would do that. But we're not talking about snap your fingers. We're talking about like taking away most of humanity's favorite toy so that they could live healthier lives, which feels like swimming upstream to me. And there's just better shit to do with my life. So I have a bad habit of spending a lot of time building a thing, throwing it over the fence and being like, job's done. and then never coming back to it again and never telling anyone about it again and just throwing it on the pile of the hundreds of repositories and projects that I've built. And so I always am checking that blind spot. I'm like, am I just falling into that same pattern? And I think I am, but I also kind of don't give a fuck. I don't know. So you let me know if you wanna turn Posse Party into a business. Hit me up. It's justin@searls.co if you hadn't figured that out yet. Other follow-up, you might know that I'm buying a condominium with Becky over in Japan in our what will soon be our second hometown, one hopes, of Shizuoka. I'm really looking forward to it. I wake up a lot of mornings thinking like, oh man, it'll be great when we have that place all set up. And I'm waking up over there, maybe not half the time, but almost half the time. And things are coming along. We're still expecting delivery in June. The developer has done a great job working with us and trying to accommodate my foreign ass that they did not anticipate having to deal with me as much as they have. Working out situations about like how do we handle the parking garage and stuff for the case where somebody doesn't have a permanent residency, which means they can't register a vehicle permanently, which means they're going to use rental cars, which is not allowed by the current bylaws and stuff. So they're working through a lot of that with me, and that's really lovely. But they have a trade show kind of for all the interior. They're calling it interior design, but whenever you hear an English phrase expressed in Japanese as katakana pronounced that way, you have to question it. When we say interior design, I think more superficially. We think in terms of artwork and furniture first and foremost. Maybe paint, like shelving, built-ins, stuff like that. I don't think we think of like tile or air conditioning units, or structural stuff out in the balcony that's like, pretty important in terms of like, like how water runs off and design around, gutters and emergency hatches and things like that. And yet, at their interior design trade show, all of those and more are covered, in addition to the curtains and the other kind of more superficial stuff. So they scheduled this finally. I knew it was coming in January or February, and one reason I wanted to get the surgery out of the way was like I couldn't fly for a month, and so I had to time the surgery. I got really lucky because the surgery got pulled forward, and then they scheduled this event for mid-January. So I'll actually be able to go. It means I have to go travel to Japan for kind of not a fun reason to go to this trade show to pick out all of the correct choices for what I want to move into in June. And they'll have samples and I'll be able to talk through stuff with them as best as, to whatever extent my language ability allows. But it feels kind of high stakes because when you're not even living full time in a condo, doing any of this after the fact is really a pain in the ass. Like, I'd have to find a contractor and work with the contractor to, schedule around my own tourist visas, right? To be able to time it. Being on the 10th floor of a condo with one elevator too, like limits mobility. And who knows about permitting and getting approval, from whatever the homeowners association is about that kind of thing. I don't want to have to worry about that. So I'm going to go to this thing. I'm going to spend a lot of time between now and mid-January reading the 8 PDFs that they sent me of all of these different catalogs of, do I want to get the floors sealed? Like, is that a thing that other people do? I've never had Japanese wood floors. Like, if I don't seal them, is that a problem? Like, I'm not worried about resale value. I'm worried about like, I've previewed these PDFs and they are predictably detailed, I'll say. Lots of diagrams, lots of specifications, lots of comparison points, and it's a little bit overwhelming. Fortunately, I got friends to help me kind of like tease out, like, do most people do this? Wink, wink, nudge, nudge. And because I'm a foreigner, when I talk to them in January and I like force out of them, it's like, do I really need this? Or is this like the undercoating that is offered by the car dealer when I buy a new car that is a waste of money? So far, they've been pretty honest about that and telling me, like, do most people buy this or not? But I've already concluded that if I just don't go to this event, if I decide, oh, I'll just do it all later, I'm going to have a real bad time, you know? Like my balcony will just be a slab of concrete and no flooring whatsoever, just rough construction concrete, you know, like whereas I pay a nominal amount of money to just pick out really nice tile or other flooring solution for it. And I'll never have to think about it again. And I'll want to spend more time out there, right? Because the balcony will have nice, proper flooring. Things like that. All right. So yeah, I'm glad I'll be able to go. I'm not super thrilled about going. It'll be interesting to see what the city is like in the dead of winter. I'm told that the winters are kind of mild. I'll be glad to put that to the test. Yeah, but that's coming up. I look forward to being on the other side of it. Maybe I'll do a quick show out there and talk about the experience a little bit. Other follow-up, I think I mentioned I'm getting Starlink set up at the house, or trying to, as a backup to Spectrum. So Starlink being SpaceX's residential ISP, you know, all of like the reason we can't take good, cool astronomy pictures from Earth anymore, because we've got all these stupid fucking drones spinning around the Earth in super low orbit, so that idiots like me can get low latency internet connections. I feel like the Starlink salespeople were really, really good. And then they hand off to a subcontractor for scheduling installs. And that subcontractor hands off to other subcontractors for doing the installs. And I have now I've been scheduled 4 times. 3 delays, 1 move up, like one kind of lateral move. And I really feel like either they're overwhelmed and they just can't keep up with demand, or they don't have their shit together, sort of like every other Elon Musk company. But regardless, the net effect is that like by the time they're figuring out their shit, I think Spectrum is like legit going to upgrade my house to real ass fiber, which is something that they, I think we're like the next neighborhood to get it, according to the last tech who was out here, the supervisor. And on their 6th or 7th visit, they actually successfully just laid new fiber line in front of my house because they believe men. is the headline of no one fucking believed me. I gave them reams of reports. I'm still running that probe script of like, this is clearly the fiber between that node and this house. Like, figure it out. They finally decided through process of elimination to believe that I was telling the truth. And they laid down new fiber up to the house, and now my internet is rock solid. Now, as rock solid as any coaxial-based internet can be, as any 30 megabits of upstream can possibly be delightful in 2025. Not having the internet go out 4 or 5 times a day is really a treat. Not having loading github.com and watching it just spin and spin and spin for 45 seconds before you see a first flash of content. Pretty nice, I'll say. So yeah, by the time Starlink gets in here, it'll just be a bandwidth add and a failure recovery mechanism. But at this point, it's like, all right, I don't know, it's $120 a month and I can turn it off whenever I want. May as well go through with it. Is that everything? I don't know. Newsletter went out last week, was pretty good. Came in just in time for the end of the month to discuss the month prior to that month. So I'm going to try to get ahead of this month's newsletter. I really do like writing. I hate putting anything that forces me to do shit, because I don't like to be forced to do shit. But I also know that if I didn't put it in my calendar, if I didn't make the commitment to you, dear reader, that like every month you're going to get an essay from me. If I didn't do that commitment, I would just never do it again, because writing is a pain in the ass, and it's good for me, and it forces me to think, and it's an opportunity to put a flag in the ground and say, hey, at this period of my life, this is what I'm thinking about, this is where I am, in a level that's more thoughtful than just mouthing off at a microphone. So it's really good for me, but man, not letting that become a stressor, right, is also a pain. Because if I skip a month, it'll be like anything else in my life. And then I'm like, oh, now I'm a guy who's like, when I feel like it, I can skip months. And then that's all my brain's thinking about, which just compounds the stress, because then I'm in this sort of superposition. Anyway, newsletter came out. That was pretty good. Everything's just hanging out. I don't know. I don't know. Like, we're entering the Christmas time season. People are doing holiday planning. A lot of my friends are out of town. I'm just kind of in hunker down mode and eat cozy food. Uh, Even though it's very sunny outside. I had to draw the shades because it was too goddamn bright to see me on the video. So if that's not your situation right now, I'm sorry. I'm trying to empathize by not showing off my sunshine privilege. I hate that word. All right, let's move on to Aaron's pun. All right, so this show comes with a free pun at the bottom of the box that Aaron stuffed in it for us. I'm reading it now for the first time, and then I'm going to throw it on a list ranking this year's puns. And here we go. The pun is, it's weird they're called regular expressions when hardly anyone uses them regularly. It's weird they're called regular expressions when hardly anyone uses them regularly. All right, so if you're not a programmer or a tech person, a regular expression is a kind of arcane looking like structure of characters that describe a pattern which is designed to match text. So for example, if you I want to let's say you got a big document and you want to be able to find all of the phone numbers in the document. You could, with regular expressions, or as often referred to as regex, you could search for show me anything with 3 digits, 3 numerical characters, and then a dash, and then 3 digits, and then a dash, and then 4 digits. Like that pattern, you could specify in regular expressions, and it would look like gobbledygook until you knew what, how regular expressions are constructed and the rules of that kind of little kind of syntax. They're used all the time. Anytime you're using an application and it's auto-detected your email address or a hyperlink and you were just able to click that, that was probably a regular expression to identify the URL or the email format. All right, so that's a regular expression. They are indeed used irregularly. Typically, an application will only have concern for a handful of them here and there. And so programmers will, sort of like SQL commands, just forget good regular expressions over time, because unless their job requires them to write a ton of regular expressions, they're probably only going to write them occasionally. And so it's a fair statement. Is it funny? Weird they're called regular expressions when hardly anyone uses them regularly. I feel like for this pun to have been good, and maybe it's operating at this level and I'm just missing it, it would also play off the word expression. If you were like an idiom, right? Or like a statement, or expressing yourself or referring to something. If you'd worked that into this, it's weird they're called regular expressions when hardly anyone talks about them with any regularity. Like I don't know, something. I'm not. Hey, I don't make the puns. I just judge them. Some people are gifted with pun creation. I'm gifted with pun, cursed with pun critique. I don't know. This is going near the bottom of the list. Sorry. Last episode 47, that's the current bottom. It says, really wanted to get into baseball this year, but I found watching the games to be very hit or miss. This is of the same sort, I would say. Right above that, I heard YouTube is hiring tons of fish lately. Apparently they make good streamers. That's at least got charm. I don't know, man. This is The one above that, I was really hoping to play Bellatra today, but I didn't have time, so I guess it's not in the cards. That's legitimately a good pun. All right, is it last place? Second to last place? Does it matter? This is the new last place. Okay. There. It's a good thing Aaron doesn't listen to this, or he might feel discouraged. No one tell him that his pun performance this quarter, his pun OKR, he's not hitting the KPIs. I'm the one who has to go to the shareholders and explain this. All right, well, fuck this shit. I'm going to talk about the news. Polymarket, the legalized gambling, except instead of sports gambling or gambling on games, it's gambling on literally anything. And as long as it's about literally anything, there's no rules. It makes sense, right? They and Kalshi. Whenever anyone talks about Kalshi, by the way, the other one, not only is it an awkward word, it makes me think of the is it Kashi, like the healthy branded cereal company. So I'm like, oh man, they've really diversified. So Polymarket and Kalshi both now, this is the news, is that Polymarket is also doing this, is building an in-house trading team as it re-enters the US, as regulations have flittered away and Polymarket can operate inside the US without much constraint. They are taking advantage of the lack of regulations to effectively do the same thing that a lot of vertically integrated companies have done, like Amazon. Right? Like, what is Amazon's sin from an antitrust perspective? One of the big ones is that they compete, they operate both as a marketplace for other sellers, but they also compete in that marketplace. So they're operating the marketplace and also competing in it and also controlling the listing order and the search and what gets promoted. So they have a thumb that they can put on all the scales to make sure that they win, while simultaneously charging sponsorship for placement in those search results so that other people can pay to have a less effective thumb put on the scales in their favor. But as soon as Amazon decides that they want to push some Amazon Basics clone of your product, you're fucked, right? Polymarket and Kalshi now have these in-house trading teams, which sounds innocuous, but they've got basically perfect information, better than perfect. They have you as a dude betting on who's going to win president, or dude betting on which dildo is going to land at the next WNBA game. You know, is it going to be girthy or skinny or ribbed, suction cup or not? You know, that's a big one right now. If you check out the WNBA dildo boards, America. If you're betting on what kind of dildo is going to land on the floors, like, you might do a lot of research. You might have stats and sheets, and you might have like a camera feed of every single WNBA arena, and you're on it. However much information you have about whatever contract you're betting on Polymarket, you have less than Polymarket does, because they've got internal data of like every single thing that's coming in. In fact, because they've got their own fraud team who's monitoring the different like things that like suspicious trades, like, oh wow, this like one person always bets on this one guy's injury status, and in large dollar amounts, and he always wins, right? So like, well, the security people might be like, all right, well, we're gonna flag that guy and ban him from the platform, but we're gonna shadow ban him and then hand off and tip that information to our new in-house trading team, who can then go make all of the same bets and win every time, because we know the odds, because we're the playmaker and also the police. So you can absolutely just skim, so because you only make so much money as like the market. You make a cut on, you're just a bookie, right? You make a cut on everyone who bets, and the winning side, like a certain amount, gets eaten up in the fees and whatnot. And it's an age old business. When the bookie is also, traditionally, right, like the promoter of the fight, and also paying one of the boxers to throw the match, or has additional information about which boxer is going to win the match. Like, that's one reason why these things are scams. Polymarket being able to leverage all of its in-house knowledge, all of that data, have a team of experts who can take advantage of that, and then be on the opposite side of the bet from you, a simple rube with an app and maybe, one too many to drink, making dildo bets. Like, they're going to be able to skim off the top and make way more money that way than as a neutral bookie service. So good work if you can find it. Granted, nothing's illegal anymore. As long as something's grift, it's okay. Grift is cool. So have fun, you fucking dummies. Don't bet on Polymarket unless you're the insider. If you're not the insider, somebody else is, which means that, like, the odds are not in your favor. Mentioning Amazon again in the news here. They are exploring cutting ties with the United States Postal Service, which of course has become hopelessly dependent on Amazon. Before that, they were hopelessly dependent on Netflix sending DVDs everywhere, so this comes and goes. But one difference is that paper mail is no longer really a going concern. Most services are going paperless, other than just stuffing our mailboxes full of junk mail. The USPS doesn't serve very many purposes anymore. Every now and then you'll have some important thing, like a check or something, come in, and even that's becoming more rare. Really, Amazon's last mile, whether it's through the USPS SurePost system or just direct partnerships, I'm not really sure. I'm not a postmaster. Amazon has so thoroughly built out their subcontracting regime of those blue-gray vans and the blue vests that they don't even need the post service anymore, even in rural areas. It's been a long time since I've had to deal with this myself, because we're very well served by the Amazon trucks, and so they never fall back to USPS. I imagine in some rural places they probably still do, but if according to the Washington Post, which of course is owned by Jeff Bezos and is reporting on this, so hopefully they've got good sources. If they're actually looking to ditch USPS, that would be probably bad for the financial viability of the United States Postal Service, which of course, under this administration and the previous version of this administration, has kind of been starved of resources to I think that people should be able to send physical mail places, and I think that it's okay for that to cost the government money and be a drain on financial resources for the nation, because the ability to do that is useful and it becomes more important the more far-flung and out the fucking middle of nowhere Alaska you are. But I don't know. Yeah, having a break-even or profitable USPS seems hard if Amazon's going to pull out. It's the privatization of everything continues apace. I mentioned that my gaming PC was expensive. Got a couple good articles here, blog posts really, that are describing one reason why gaming PCs got more expensive in October and November, and why that's coming for you too, is that OpenAI, Sam Altman, he, these articles get into reasons why. OpenAI signed exclusive kind of secret deals to lock up like 50-60% of the DRAM wafers for RAM chips in the world supply, which already didn't have a lot of buffer because the prices had actually been waning a little bit, and so like a lot of secondary suppliers had reduced orders, and and taking fabs offline, and they'd already sort of stockpiling had occurred earlier this year, which had led to that soft demand due to the fear of tariffs, and so there was already not a lot of buffer or slack in the system. So when word got out that OpenAI has signed agreements to basically get first dibs on all the DRAM that Earth can produce, immediately the first thing that shoots up is the RAM kits that you would install into a gaming PC. And so I paid about triple what I normally would have for just, I think, 32 gigs, 216 gig DIMMs. Sounds right. I don't think it was 2 8s. Yeah. I paid like $250 for sticks that probably would have cost $110 in September. The first article, the RAM shortage comes for us all, explains kind of how this is going to ladder up for everybody. Nice short post. It's kind of more just like an explainer. And the Moore's Law is dead, which I think he is primarily a YouTuber, but this is a very good article on exactly what this means and what kind of devices are going to be affected and how long this is going to run. Basically, like the next 9 to 12 months are kind of fucked no matter what we do, but the future beyond that is a little bit less clear. You know, this is going to fuck up lots of consumer devices that come with RAM installed, which is a lot of devices. And if you're not somebody who's a massive make or has like a huge buffer of profit margin like Apple, we may just see prices skyrocket in lots of consumer electronics, or supply really dwindle. So I don't know. Just like with the tariffs rolling out, it's always a good time to pull forward those technology purchases. It's fucked up. One thing that's not fucked up, one thing that's still very simple and lovely, is the wholesome performance domination that Nintendo manages over the Japanese video game market. I flagged this one from Video Games Chronicle, one of the last websites that actually does video game news. I almost skimmed past this headline because it was about Kirby Air Riders, a game which I have no interest in, which was made by the guy who made Super Smash Brothers. And Nintendo probably just let him make it so that he would keep working at all, because he's really burned out on that series. And I don't know. It's like a racing game. I'm not going to explain Kirby Air Riders. I've watched a couple of videos and a couple of people really like it, and I'm really happy for them. So I was about to skim past until I saw full headline is Kirby Air Riders tops the Japanese physical charts as Switch and Switch 2 games sweep the top 15. Now, granted, this is just physical game sales, but those are still pretty substantial in Japan. They've moved to digital sales more slowly than a lot of other countries, and certainly like Switch users probably prefer the physical carts more so than traditional console owners. But top 15 all being Switch and Switch 2 is not a great sign for PlayStation, for sure. And 18 of the top 20 games that week were available on Nintendo's consoles. That's like a level of sales domination that Nintendo has not enjoyed in Japan probably since, I never saw anything like that in the Wii era. I don't think I ever saw anything like that in the Switch era. Definitely not GameCube or 64. Like, it might be seriously since like the Super Famicom that they've been able to like dominate sales so thoroughly. But at least Sony had the foresight to stockpile a RAM, so they're going to do Black Friday sales, or did do Black Friday deals on the PS5. But yeah, kudos to Nintendo. That's a rare. I used to be really, really into charting video game sales and tracking NPD, because like back in the day, like there was a beautiful 5 to 10 year period where the game sales data was actually tractable. Like in the 80s, 90s, like a lot of games didn't even have proper release dates. They just showed up sometimes. It wasn't an the Mario Brothers 3 was one of the first ones with like a clear date and a strategy from a marketing perspective to like, we are launching on this date. But through the mid 90s, early 90s, games just kind of like showed up on any given Tuesday. And then it was like, that game's out now. And you kind of peg it to a month because there'd be a marketing push for magazines. And so doing any kind of aggregated sales data analysis was really challenging in the gaming industry. Until the late 90s, NPD started putting out a lot of these numbers because they would sell, sort of like Gartner or Forrester, they would sell like more data in the crosstabs that would be very useful to publishers or people inside the industry. But as a teaser and to kind of get the PR and get in the news, they'd put sort of like the top line, top charts. So it kind of like Billboard would with music, that stopped working. I think they're called Sira or Circa or some other name now, but it stopped working because now all these things are digital and the platform holders aren't going to tell you what the digital sales are. So we have way less good data now, but yeah, Switch and Switch 2 are doing great. I wonder how Nintendo's DRAM stockpile looks, or if we're going to see the Switch 2, which is already overpriced at $499 US, go up even higher. Next story, Meta, named after the metaverse, from Ready Player One, which itself stole it from Snow Crash, which is a good book. Meta is reducing their investment in the metaverse because it's a boondoggle and they blow a ton of money on bad VR experiences. Apparently by 30%. And so they're going to see a lot of layoffs come January. And that's this story from Bloomberg breaking that news. It's going to basically be a reorg. It's not like that they're getting out of the VR AR game. It's that they're moving resources and pulling forward investment into the AR stuff, the glasses, as opposed to the Quest line and the more traditional VR gaming, where I think that like they're just not seeing the hockey stick growth. I think that for a company of Meta size, it is a nice lifestyle business, but it's not at all from the revenue and the, even potential of operating profit in that segment. Like, their level of investment that they're bringing to bear on what they call the metaverse stuff, there's no hope of that ever being a profitable venture. The AR side, there's green shoots and they're getting traction. So that's where they're shifting resources to. So I'm sure it's going to result in even more people in the gaming adjacent world in the breadlines come January. But this article, man, like they describing that Meta's leadership met at Zuckerberg's compound in Hawaii because he bought like half of a fucking island. One of my favorite bartenders from that island, her family not thrilled that their ancestral homeland was mostly just bought by Mark Zuckerberg. They're like, if a cooler billionaire had bought it, we would have been fine with that. But he is such a penis wrinkle that he has brought shame to our entire culture, was what she said, not me. That's her words. But yeah, maybe they just had to save some money for all these big AI purchases too. I mean, like it's Meta has no soul, so it makes sense that they would just kind of be chasing whatever thing that that might work. But honestly, like if I'm Zuckerberg and I'm seeing like, Valve announce the Steam Frame thing and seeing like sales of all of these VR games are actually way higher on Steam a year later after like whatever exclusivity agreement that Meta paid for to fund the development of all these VR games. Like, I don't know. Like, I struggle to care because everything that they've done so far on the VR side is so fucked. And you can track the purchase of Oculus by Meta to the gradual decline and erosion of like VR gaming generally. And I'm pretty sure that would have happened regardless because it's going to be a niche. But by blowing it up into this big thing where suddenly you had like investor class people really excited about VR and developing AAA VR games, that it created a mini hype balloon cycle, and now the bloom's come off the rose, and now virtually nobody is making virtual reality games, and that is something that makes me sad. Well, one reason I'm so excited that Valve is releasing the Steam frame, because then at least there'll be a little bit of new blood. In fact, I just saw that Thief, the classic PC game, has a new VR game that, for all I know, was actually funded by Meta. But it just came out a couple days ago, and I'm like, oh, great. When the Steam frame comes out, I'll be sure to try that. So anyway, Meta's laying people off. Maybe it's to make space for Alan Dye and his ego. Alan Dye, originally the story was broken by Mark Gurman. He framed it as a huge coup for Meta that they got to hire Alan Dye. Alan Dye, if you don't know him, is the head of, I think, interaction design is maybe the term at Apple. He was elevated into that position by upon Johnny Ive leaving, with Alan Dye originally heading up software. And before he left, even, he was like, when Johnny Ive was the chief design officer, but clearly in this like professor emeritus position, kind of wandering around Apple Park, Alan Dye was responsible for the software side. I believe Evans Hankey was maybe the first one in charge of the physical hardware side. Evans Hankey is now with him, went to Love From and IO, and is now at OpenAI, along with lots of other designers from Johnny's period there. Alan Dye went to Meta, and John Gruber and Daring Fireball, he's done it. He was all over this, because he's got plenty of people inside Apple who fucking hate this man. And he's been replaced by somebody, Stephen LeMay, I want to say. I don't know. Alan Dye's job was he designed the cardboard packages, and that was his trade. And he came to Apple, and now he's in charge of like all of the software, look and feel, and the fact that when you're looking at a Mac and you're in Notification Center and you want to dismiss a notification, that he is why you have to hover over the notification for 500 milliseconds before an X button appears, and then you can click the X and you can dismiss the notification, right? Alan Dye clearly only cared about how software looked in screenshot and maybe sizzle reel form. But, there's reports for years that he and his lackeys had no interest in actual, like, God forbid the following Apple's own human interface guidelines, but no interest in the actual science of user experience, no interest in the R&D kind of aspect to it, no interest in applying ancient wisdom about humans and how they work and how they learn, right? Just focused on form over function. Now, a lot of people point to that and they say, hey, like this liquid glass thing that just came out in iOS 26, everybody hates it and it's a real boondoggle. Like, the only thing I have to add to this conversation, I'm as excited as anyone that Alan Dye is leaving, because I also don't think he had that good of visual taste either. And having somebody in that role who at least can like make the trains run on time, like you can hire people with great visual design skills and good taste up and down the chain. But like at the end of the day, what you're responsible for is a product that works well and functions well. And so having somebody in this new role, Stephen LeMay, who's apparently that's the kind of guy he is. He's an Apple lifer. He's been there for fucking ever. And he's like a UI, UX, human interface expert. And that's what he cares about. So I'm excited about this. But when I look at like the liquid glass fiasco, visually, yeah, all the apps kind of look samey, right? Because everything's kind of transparent, and you might pick like one highlight color and, your primary button in your app might be shaded like an orange tint if orange is your app's preferred tint color because it's your brand or whatever. But in general, the controls mostly look the same. They mostly behave the same. They're mostly located like for the search bar is now pretty much forced upon you to be in the bottom of the UI. And a lot of app developers don't like that because they had their own kind of bespoke design for custom controls and whatnot. And I could see why the developer community is upset about this. But as a user, I don't want to use your fucking custom controls. The last time somebody made a good goddamn custom control was probably that doomed social media app called Path. Remember them? Like you clicked a button, it fanned out like different options in the corner. That was a pretty cool UI control. That was 13 years ago. Nowadays, when people are doing custom controls, it's almost always shitty ass cross-compile shortcuts. It's almost always something that doesn't look, breathe, feel like a real button, has some sort of accessibility quirk that sucks, has to be learned, is awkward. You know, the limited vocabulary that Liquid Glass gives you, and the amount of syntactic vinegar that gets poured all over your Swift UI code if you decide to deviate from the blessed way to accomplish something using under this new unified design, that's branded as Liquid Glass. I think that's tremendously good. I would much rather every app look exactly the fucking same and then behave the same and then be predictable. Like fear not, I will not be confused as to what app I'm inside of. You get used to that, right? Like that's a wonderful problem to have. My current problem is pretty much every app that I use doesn't use any of Apple's default controls, feels like shit, touch targets are too small, looks like ass, isn't updated well. Every time the operating system updates, all of those custom controls break in new ways. Like, developers are high on their own supply if they think like consistency is like something not to be like lauded and chased after in the current moment of like where all of Apple's platforms all have totally distinct visual styles. And custom controls have been pretty shit for a long time and getting shittier. And that's why custom controls were the built-in controls, were insufficient. Swift UI's built-in controls sucked for a long time. And it's clear because they were like holding back for this new Liquid Glass thing. And now they're really nice. They're a baseline level of nice. I think that a lot of developers just are cooked and think that their custom controls are better. That's what they're used to. Maybe it's a branding thing or what. I don't know. But like, I've played with a lot of Liquid Glass controls, the built-in stuff. I've been tinkering with it off and on. Like, I think it's actually really good. Like, it's a huge improvement. Now, visually, yes. Like, there's too much negative space. Alan Dye loves too much negative space. I think that'll get dialed in. The transparency over content, yeah, it doesn't make sense for apps that aren't content rich, right? Like photos and videos and things. And those are what you're typically making demo reels of, because that's more exciting and visually stimulating than lots of text, for example. And I get it. And that'll probably be adjusted. But like at the end of the day, having new blood, having new, like, not a fresh coat of paint, but like new expressions of built-in user interface controls, and just that bottleneck there of like a more limited vocabulary of those built-in UI controls. Even if they change form, the kind of top layer, I think like a lot of the guts underneath that are actually very sound. Like when you dig in, the APIs make a lot of sense. When you watch the developer videos, like Alan Dye might have been a fuckwit, but like the people under him actually building this stuff under Craig Federighi's organization, the software engineering group, like, yes, he might have been asking for it to look fucking ugly, but like they engineered the fuck out of it, and it's very well constructed as far as I can tell. Now there's still a lot of bugs and stuff, but like in terms of like comparing the iOS 26 versus iOS 7's release, the bugs that I've been experiencing are pretty minor compared to that point. And honestly, like very few of them seem to be the design's fault per se. Many of them are just huge, big, sweeping changes to stock apps that probably had to change a lot of internal framework stuff to get upgraded in time for yada yada. So anyway, Alan Dye leaving Apple. No one is sad about this. I don't think. Like, people are acting like Tim Cook is like completely sideswiped by this and it came out of nowhere. And maybe it did come out of nowhere, but he's not a fucking idiot. No one gets fired at Apple. You get managed out or you leave and it's a happy coincidence. I don't think he's super butthurt about this. I think he's probably all right. I think he's like, all right, like, I've been getting shit about this guy ever since, Johnny was here. It's probably time for an operator who actually like runs a tight ship, somebody like John Turnus over hardware, but for software design. And so hiring somebody who sounds like a guy who is more of an operator, that seems more like Tim Cook's MO. He probably just doesn't of all of the different competencies Apple has to have, he is probably least confident in that regard of the like ooey gooey nature of design. So letting this problem kind of work itself out is probably even a blessing to him, is my guess. So I'm looking forward to what this means for we won't see any real result, I don't think, in iOS 27. This is something that 2-3 years from now, we might benefit from. The only thing that might change in the short term is prioritization. We might see getting the Mac back up to speed in terms of some of the inconsistencies there and the rough edges. That might get shored up a little bit sooner than it otherwise would. But a lot of this kind of tightening the bolts was going to happen anyway in the year following a big major UI refresh. So I don't expect heaven and earth to change tomorrow, but having somebody at Apple, the person in charge of software interfaces, having them not be a fucking moron seems like an improvement. And he can go to Meta and him and Johnny can, either Johnny at OpenAI or Alan Dye at Meta, either that they can prove that they were really fucking hot shit, or show their ass, and we'll see. So far, the only person who's left Apple and then done anything at all fucking interesting, as far as I can remember, is Tony Fadell, who went on to start Nest, and then Nest was pretty fucking rad. And then he kind of made a lot of money, and I don't know what he does now. He wrote a book. Book sounded pretty good. Ben Thompson had a really good Stratechery post on NVIDIA and OpenAI. I don't feel like paraphrasing it other than to say, here, he said, let's see if I can find it. Yes. Just to take a quick pull quote here. If you go back a year or two, you might make the case that NVIDIA had 3 moats relative to TPUs. Superior performance, significantly more flexibility due to GPUs being more general purpose than TPUs. TPUs are Google's alternative hardware. And CUDA and the associated developer ecosystem surrounding it. OpenAI, meanwhile, had the best model, extensive usage of their API, and the massive number of consumers using ChatGPT. Okay, so that's base stakes. That's where he started at. This article is his essay written in response to Google Gemini coming out and suddenly the market waking up to the possibility that somebody other than OpenAI could have the best LLM, and that LLM could have been built without NVIDIA hardware. Or all of the knock-on hyperscalers and data centers and nuclear power plants that everyone's talking about building. All the trillions of dollars of hypothetical investment that the rest of the non-Google industry has been obsessed with. That's propping up the US economy and our GDP. If Google just does a better job with their kind of existing path of progression with the tensor technology and these TPUs, as well as their software stack, to the point where they're actually the best of breed, it poses problems to OpenAI, NVIDIA, and honestly, the US economy. So, the US economy as defined by the stock market, I should say. All right, so he listed three moats for each of NVIDIA and or three advantages for each of NVIDIA and OpenAI. He says, the question then is, what happens if the first differentiator for each company goes away? That being, NVIDIA no longer has superior performance, and OpenAI no longer has the best model. I would argue that those are the two best differentiators that both have. And when you ask the question of like, why did Sam Altman just buy all the RAM in the world? If he, who just announced a code red, quote unquote, in response to Gemini 3 Pro's like announcement and all this new stuff, one thing he could do is he could try to buy all the RAM in the world to box out his competition. And that's mentioned in one of the aforementioned and linked blog posts. I think Moore's Law is Dead made that point. Like, if you're no longer the best, but you already have either this first mover advantage, or you've got the reached network effect like you have with ChatGPT, then it's okay to stop being the best if you're willing to play hardball and like buckle down and break some knees to stay on top long enough. The problem is like, it's not OpenAI versus some fucking startup. It's OpenAI versus Google, which is one of the biggest companies on the planet, who is making money hand over fist and doesn't rely on outside funding and hype among the investor class in the market to continue rolling ahead. So structurally, I kind of like Google's odds here. Ben makes the opposite point, saying that OpenAI has got like, a tremendous amount of assets, like the user base to ChatGPT. And I agree that user base is very valuable. And when it comes time to strip mine this company, it will sell for a tidy sum. But like the problem is OpenAI needs, they need trillions of dollars of return on investment for anything that they're talking about to ever be worth it. Over a 10, 15 year horizon. And like, seems like they're already hitting a point of diminishing returns where they don't know what's next and they don't know how to get there, and scale isn't sufficient. And so if you spend all this money scaling up, you think about how companies grow. I always liked Kent Beck has this 3X paradigm model for thinking about company growth. The first X, you start a company and you're in the explore phase. And so you're not worried about growth. You're real small. You're exploring, you're trying different things. And then you finally hit on something. You hit the first kind of inflection point, or the first nodule in that chart. And you hit paid, or maybe they call that product market fit or something. And then you enter the second X, the expand phase. And now you're just growing, right? You grow. Shit catches fire. You got to figure out how to operate properly. You got to figure out change management. You got to hire somebody to do HR. You do all of those things that you do as you're a growing business or growing endeavor. You build that moat and you box out other competitors so that you hit the next phase. So the next inflection point. So you go from kind of like a flat looking line to a very, very fastly growing piece of line in this chart. And then the next inflection point is the third and final phase of the exploit. And that's the operate it now phase. So you've already cornered the market. You found the product market fit. You cornered the market. Not very many companies get to this point. And now it's just time to not like rest on our laurels per se, but do the things that you need to do now to like you already grew. Now become profitable. Cut the costs that are associated with that hypergrowth. Figure out how to systematize and automate things so that your operating costs are lower. And then you start turning the screws, especially if you've cornered a whole market, to extract profit. And different leaders are appropriate for those three different stages. And now that we live in sort of this like, I don't know, great man Ayn Randian theory of man babies with daddy issues who just insist on being founder led for all three of these stages, we see that sometimes people at these different phases are not well suited. Like, it is clear Sam Altman is really good at the first inflection point where he's got just something to go and hype it up and to raise the funding and raise the capital for the hypergrowth. How does OpenAI, if they're coming up on this next inflection point, because like there's only so many humans you can sell to in the world, it's actually a bummer because they're going to run out of y-axis before they actually have delivered on the thing that like they sold at the product market fit phase. Like they're still like the product claims to do things or claims to be on the precipice of being able to do things that it still cannot do and doesn't. And with GPT-5 does not necessarily seem like it's a whole lot closer to getting done, but like they're quickly reaching all of the electricity on the planet, all of the money on the planet, all of the RAM on the planet. And then all of the users available on the planet. So like if you max out all of those things, you can't grow anymore. So then you go to the exploit phase, and what's there to exploit? Other than investors, which is now you've just been exposed as a Ponzi scheme. It's like you're not going to get all these people to pay $200 a month if you still haven't delivered the goods. So I suspect that if the thing that OpenAI needs next is actually to go back to like Ilya, what's his face, who quit OpenAI, the previous CTO. I suspect that if you look at this moment and you're like, we need to go back to base research. It was just a comment in Hacker News, but I wasn't aware of this. ChatGPT 5.1, the current one, is still based on the exact same pre-training data, the same fundamental model as GPT-4o was. They haven't been able to do a fresh training from scratch since then. Everything is just layers of slop and mud piled up on top in terms of, secondary trainings and system prompting and things on top of that. And whatever that pipeline looks like, it's probably analogous to search engine pipelines where they just kind of keep adding processors at the end of massaging the query or the results, to get a better output, or like pipeline stages in a CPU, like if you think of like ChatGPT as like an x86, an old style CPU with like lots of pipeline stages where it's like every time that the CPU hits an if statement, it's like, oh, well, we just invested 13 pipeline stages in the processing of this instruction. Now we got to flush all of that and start over again. As you compare to like simpler architectures like RISC and ARM with much shorter pipelines. So like those if statements don't cost as much. Now, if you're not familiar, right? Like that analogy maybe is not awesome, but the more complexity that they have to slather on top of to get marginal gains out of their GPTs, their LLM, the more it exposes the fact that they actually have not cracked the nut, that scale itself won't get them there. And that the thing about scale, the thing about growing anything, is that as you invest in that growth, it ossifies, right? As the creek becomes a stream, becomes a river, becomes this raging Mississippi that just sunders a fucking continent because so much water is going through it, it becomes harder to change course. When it's a little creek, you can just kind of like mush with your fingers some dirt and then redirect the creek to some other path. But when you've invested all of this money into very specific hardware, right, configured in data centers that only work with that specific hardware, and cooling solutions that are only, specified for that particular, layout and the needs and the constraints of that specific hardware. And the hardware itself is tightly coupled to the expectations of that particular software stack, right? We need this kind of like mix of matrix multiplication and these other things. And then you do all that stuff. They've built and they're building now, and they're committed to building this raging river of optimization for scale. And that means that if LLMs as we conceive of them right now, not to say LLMs aren't the solution, but like LLMs as we conceive of them right now, if that is not the final answer, they're not going to be able to pivot. They're not going to be able to go back to, let's just do some base research and figure out how to like make this better. But Google, best fucking thing that could happen to Google, maybe not the best thing, a very good thing that could happen to Google is for this bubble to burst. because then it buys them time to go back and incorporate some of the like lessons learned from DeepMind, which was one of the smartest acquisitions that they ever made. You know, how do we bake in reinforcement learning? How do we have these people who've basically solved protein folding and all sorts of other medical issues over the intervening years as we've continued to fund this space research? How do we incorporate different ways of thinking and structuring? And they've got all the runway in the world because, and the reason I say it's not a bad thing is if all the AI stuff goes bust, guess what? People are going to still be typing into Google and Google's going to still be capturing all that money. So the threat of ChatGPT as being like something to siphon ads away from them goes down. Yeah, man, I don't know. I would not be investing in NVIDIA. I would not be on day one of the OpenAI IPO. Again, if you're not the insider, you're the greater fool. Let's see what else we got. That was just me riffing there for a bit. I was had very little to do with what Ben Thompson actually wrote. You should go read his fucking article. Jonathan Reedy, who I feel like I've met at some point. His name sounds super fucking familiar. I'm going to click around a little bit. He has 2 blog posts. Okay, well, this is one of them. Everyone in Seattle Hates AI talks about how he's building an AI mapping tool. Had a friend from Microsoft for coffee, showed them the tool, and the person was like real negative about it and how that bummed him out. But then realizes that like if you work in a company like Microsoft and you're being forced and your performance is measured by how much AI are you using as opposed to like how productive are you in this new era of AI, you pretty quickly grow to hate fucking artificial intelligence and AI and all the hype. So interesting. It definitely does seem like Microsoft's approach to AI is not very well considered. It's very much cart before the horse. Like, we're going to co-pilot all the things. We're going to just slap an LLM on absolutely everything. And then through using it a lot, like they concluded that it was better before they had any reason to believe it was actually better. Again, this is all built on the hope that if we scale it, then things will work better. And when things don't work better, if you work at a company where if you're not using the thing that's supposed to work better to work, then if you fail to toe the company line, then you're just fucked. It becomes something you're not allowed to admit that like this is not good enough or that there's a better way to do it. And so you end up living in this sort of Orwellian hole. So yeah, imagining working in a company like that would indeed suck. We know Microsoft is that way, but I'm unsure of just how many other companies actually are operating that way. I know some people inside of Microsoft, and they definitely talk about it this way. But I don't know if this is an experience or this is a blog post. And the reason I flagged it, other than it's an interesting anecdote of like, oh yeah, no wonder the startup community and like individuals like me can be really excited because we can just use the good parts of AI and then forget the rest, which often includes forgetting Copilot, frankly. I have no need for Copilot on a day-to-day basis, at least, especially the Microsoft variety. But as I think about it, I really just don't, I wonder whether or not this is going to be the undoing of Satya Nadella at Microsoft. Like, if this bubble bursts and they struggle organizationally to back themselves out of this Copilot hole, it's not clear to me like what the next play is. They've burned a lot of their business side sales channel. But then again, I don't know. They've got a lot of structural advantages. It's just that Azure has been the thing that they can fall back on as sort of like a reliable area of growth and dollars coming in. But if demand doesn't keep up with the build out that they're doing, yeah, I don't know. A lot of people are making a lot of like, it's almost like you're playing poker with like 7 egomaniacs, all these FANG Corporation people. And they all go all in simultaneously, and nobody has anything better than a pair of 8s. And you're looking at them, and you're like, and you're holding, I don't know, three of a kind, and you're looking at your hand and you're like, well, surely I'm not going to beat all of these big fucking companies who just went all in. Like, at least one of them must have a good hand. And then you realize, like, if they all go out at once, the downstream effects on employment, on the stock market and everything else are going to be so calamitous that even if you win, even if you get all the chips, there's not going to be a cashier anymore to convert those chips into real currency. And also the power is going to go out. And you won't be able to brag about it because your internet's going to be gone. And also you're going to lose your job. Like that's how it feels sometimes when we talk about like the degree to which the level of commitment to AI tooling as being a foregone conclusion for not just marginally improved productivity, which is what I benefit from, and I fucking love it, and it's saving me all kinds of time, and I'm automating all kinds of shit that I never otherwise would have, but rather like replacement of humans at scale, and eliminating entire I think of it in two ways. There's classes of like work and jobs that are 100% or 95% plus drudgery that could indeed be automated. But then there's like a lot of jobs that require any more amount of creativity and thought. And the line for where AI or LLM based technologies can replace people, that line can move up and down. And it moves up and down based on the quality of the tool, the quality of the results produced by the tool. And so right now, AI can replace mediocre talent in a lot of roles. And if you're a company that can succeed with just mediocre talent, you could save a lot of money by moving to more and more AI stuff. But beyond a certain point, if you've got a whole lot of mediocre talent, at your fingertips as a user of AI, like it actually takes an extreme level of discipline and rigor and thought and intelligence to take 20 virtual mediocre agents and then go faster and do better than if you had 3 really smart human colleagues, which is what I've found so fascinating about it and what I really love, because I've got 0 human colleagues. And so like figuring out how to use agents effectively has been really rewarding to me. But yeah, I've gone on too long. This has been Justin complaining about AI. I'm going to skip the next one because it's more AI shit. One more AI thing, because I mentioned it, I'm going to link to this. Gemini 3 Pro came out. Google's been, much to Sam Altman's consternation, drip feeding lots of like cool demos and shit. They have the Nano Banana Pro, which is really good image generation. Yesterday, they rolled out the Frontier of Vision AI. That is to say, not generation of videos or images, but rather understanding of images and video. And this is an area where the other models, although they are multimodal and although they can incorporate text and video and images, well, video is a stretch, images and audio together. GPT is not very good at OCR. GPT is not very good at spatial reasoning. It's Gemini Pro, like what they just announced in this blog post. Read it, check it out. It's very good. It can make sense of old-timey documents and then translate them into a recomposable structured format that like captures extremely illegible old, historical artifacts. It can reason about, I hate the phrase reason about, but it can reason about and build charts from, unstructured data and like large, gigantic documents. And Google's the Google Books people. They've got like all these images of every book on the planet. This is like nothing to sneeze at, and it makes sense that they would prioritize it. But they're also the first ones I've seen with any amount of spatial reasoning. So it can point to individual pixels and an image and associate those pixels with like, that's the wine bottle, that's the candy bar. And it can draw, like paths through an image to be like, here's how to solve this puzzle, right? Here is the I'll highlight the road, right, in the satellite view. If you keep scrolling, they've got these little galleries. Like, it can do annotated images. Like in this case, it's got a picture of like a cork board with like a whole lot of tools posted to it. It's annotating and captioning what each of those tools are all over this board. It can tell you what's there and what's where. And now you could just use it for that purpose. Like, hey, label everything in my closet for me, or tell me what's in the pantry or where this is. Or more importantly, what we're seeing when we look at these demos is like that's its internal reasoning is able to like interpret that itself for whatever end state you want, right? So like say you're looking at one of those boards and you want to know how to plug devices in together. It would be able to explain to you, so, okay, so grab the thing in the top left, unhose that from the thing that it's connected to the thing that's two over to the right, and then plug it into the thing at the top right, and you should see that green light turn on, right? Like that's a level of like spatial reasoning sophistication that no other LLM has managed. One of the comments in the Hacker News thread about this was like, I just fed into this new Gemini Pro model, some rough cuts like of what I needed for some electrical diagram. He's like electrician drafting person. And it came and one-shotted something that would have taken 2 or 3 of his junior colleagues to produce over a long period of time. So no joke. But the two things that really blow me away, and this article really builds, it's a great little tour de force, really, of us seeing LLMs do things that traditionally they've required a lot of bolted on tooling or MCP servers or other shit to do. One is screen understanding. So it shows a demo of like looking at a Google sheet. Is it even a Google sheet? It looks like an Excel. I think this might be legit Excel. And it is doing UI automation. I've done UI automation this way for 15, 20 years, like Sakuli, which is like an ancient tool where you would screen cap and move things around manually. It's doing all of that in real time as it tries to use Excel's interface to create a pivot table to answer a question. And you're watching the mouse move and everything. And this is not, importantly, this is very different than like having Playwright or some sort of browser automation technology. This is using like just a visual screen and the mouse pointer. This is much, much closer to the LLM itself being able just to click around in your computer, which has kind of been the dream. We forget that like browser automation tools, what they're really looking at under the hood is they're not doing visual reasoning. They're looking at the DOM, a big tree of like what's in the document, to navigate that way. Typically, they might take interstitial screenshots here and there to check their work, but whether they're automating that or automating an iOS or an Android application, those also have hooks beneath the actual visual layer that allow you to automate them, because they were both, those platforms were invented in an era where UI automation was a necessary way to automate QA tasks. When we look at traditional desktop applications, or we look at like, web applications you don't own or that interact with other stuff, or just messy, like being able just to like be like a human, look at the screen, click around on the screen, figure shit out. You don't have to worry about only accessible apps working. Like that's the next level thing. That's really, I think, the when we talk about the capability of agents to do meaningful shit, what Google's showing here, very impressive. And if ChatGPT, if OpenAI can't even do a full model rebuild at this point, like it's going to be hard for them to answer this. I'm sure they will, right? Like we're in this horse race. Everyone's kind of coming out ahead inch by inch. But only OpenAI has like a true sort of Damocles over their head in terms of it's not enough to be as good. You have to be perceived as being ascendant. As soon as that story that you're not going to like take over the planet in 5 years, as soon as that story dissipates, the money's going to dry up. And as soon as the money dries up, the thing about Ponzi schemes, that comes to bite everyone, comes to bite you. The fourth thing that pops up here, video understanding. And so what this is they call it high frame rate understanding. Right now, when you feed a video into any LLM service or chatbot or whatever, it will typically, if it does anything at all with that video, it will grab like one frame every second and kind of just tease together like, I see this and I see this. And it's really, really slow and laborious. Here we're seeing like high frame rate stuff where it's doing like 10 frames per second or higher. It's able to like analyze tennis swings, golf swings, and that sort of thing. And now we get into this era of like, okay, so like you can not only, you can judge things in motion, right? As well as stills. And so taking a video of anything literally moving, which is a lot of videos, not this video, because it's just my mouth moving, but like a lot of videos, and analyzing what that thing is doing in motion, that requires a human to be able to see more than like one frame per second, right? And now that we've got something that's like, we're talking high frame rate, and that might literally be just 10, but being able to see a higher frame rate and see these things, and like animate, and then see that the model is actually able to pick up on particular patterns of the images in motion. That's a big deal. In fact, this was the first time that I thought for a while that like previously for this iOS application that I'm building for language acquisition, my hope had been to be able to accomplish all of it with Apple Foundation models. And just use the on-device LLM to the greatest extent possible to take in whatever you capture, whether those are images or videos, analyze what's in those things or text, analyze what's in that, and then come up with a list of concepts and then formalize and structure that from there. Seeing shit like this makes it really hard for me to hold firm to the notion that I would even want to try to accomplish this with entirely on-device LLM technology. Like maybe that would be the default setting, and I've been wanting to avoid a premium tier that gives you a certain number of AI credits or some shit. But if it's this much better and our time is valuable, then like maybe that's the answer. Maybe I do plug in Gemini 3 Pro, and I hope that eventually, the local models keep catching up to it so that people don't need the premium tier, where I'm a middleman paying API fees. I don't know, but like this, I follow the AI stuff pretty closely. This Gemini 3 Pro thing really stopped me in my tracks, so that's an optimistic AI note to end on. Let's call it. A couple more articles. I got carried away with myself. I gotta rest my voice. Let's recommend some shit. All right, I'll be quick. TV shows, Pluribus. Everyone's talking about it. It's by Vince Gilligan, the guy who did Breaking Bad. It's also in Albuquerque, which makes me think that he just lives there. Good show. Creepy as fuck. Real weird. Okay. Star Trek Enterprise. Old Star Trek show. Was single-handedly responsible for basically ending the run of terrestrial Star Trek shows. Has Scott Bakula from Quantum Leap. Therefore, it's fucking awesome. That's just a reminder. So, finishing up a rewatch of Star Trek Enterprise that I started like a year ago and forgot about and came back to. I don't know why, but last night I started the Section 31 movie, which takes place sort of in the Star Trek Discovery timeline. And it's got Michelle Yeoh, and Michelle Yeoh's pretty good. They clearly wanted this movie to be like a wildly different tone. It looks like it started as a pilot, but then they realized it wasn't working even in that phase of development. And so they just stitched it together into a movie. I noped out about 40 minutes in. Maybe I'll come back to it, but I hope I don't. The only thing that I liked about this is they cast the, I should know his name, Sam, something. The guy who isn't Tim Robinson in Detroiters, who shows up in I Think You Should Leave a lot, black guy. He's fucking hilarious, and he's in this movie, and that made me happy. And that's the only thing that made me happy in that movie. So Section 31 is a bad Star Trek thing. I'm just looking forward to Starfleet Academy, which also takes place way in the future because it apparently takes place after the end of Star Trek Discovery. So that we're talking like 1,000 years hence from anything that you've probably seen in Star Trek before, where they're kind of bootstrapping a new Starfleet Academy as Starfleet has to kind of come back online, or the Federation, I guess. Yeah. So looking forward to that. That better be good. Yeah, I guess I'll round out the Star Trek corner. Apparently, I'm on a kick. I finished Lower Decks, the animated series, had five seasons. Was pretty good. Was never all of anything. Like, was never fully funny. Was never fully engaging from a story perspective. Was never fully, I don't know, one could say beautiful for animation, for an adult animated series. Like, we don't typically think of the art, but then I think about like a show like Archer, when it's several of Archer's first seasons, the artwork was actually pretty, especially the background art. It's like phenomenal. Yeah, it was very lore heavy and like callback heavy. So if you're a fan of Star Trek, you kind of get that out of it. Some kind of like inside jokey material. I wouldn't rise to the level of me recommending it unless you happen to only be subscribed to Paramount Plus and you don't have a lot of options. But if you're just like me and you want to have seen all the Star Trek content to an extent that I apparently don't feel the same compulsion to see all of the Marvel content or all of the Star Wars content, then you got to watch it. But I don't know. It was fine. Over in gaming land, Dave Mosier, friend of the show, showed up on our first episode of Hot Fix. Longtime colleague of mine, plays games every now and then. He's a very different kind of gamer from me, and so whenever he sends me a recommendation, I know it's not necessarily going to be my cup of tea. But he was talking up Soulframe, which is made by, is it Digital Extremes, the outfit over in London, Ontario. So also up in Canada. A bunch of people who went to my college were from London, Ontario, because we had a lot of Dutch people at my college. And apparently there's a bubble of Dutch Canadians in London. So like I'd meet all these people. They're like, oh, I'm from London. I'm like, oh, wow. And I learned in a hurry that London, England was far less popular than London, Ontario at my particular campus. Anyway, Digital Extremes in London, Ontario made Warframe, which is a very successful MMO, instanced MMO thing. And now music is playing out of my HomePods. That's cool. It happens. Warframe is a free-to-play game, and it's monetized out the asshole, and it's very grindy, and there's a lot of like wait timers in it. And I don't know if it was always designed to be that. I don't know if that's of just the era that it came up in, and so it's sort of under those constraints. I don't know if like their plan is to do it all over again on a new timeline. So this new thing called Soulframe, which is more of a fantasy RPG, but like also an MMO. I just love I love a good grind. And so Dave shared an invite code with me to Soulframe. Graphics are great. The controls are really good. The combat seems to be thoughtful. Like you actually have to be engaged in the combat, even though it is fundamentally a shoot at a guy and hope the numbers add up to be enough to hurt guy kind of game. Controller friendly. I'm still sort of in the mire of like some level of what feels like a series of never-ending tutorials. What I can say is it does seem very good. It seems like for a game like this, you want to get in on the ground floor, because coming to like a game like Warframe or Destiny 2 after it's been up for a decade is so overwhelming. And at that point, they only care about the diehard whales who are paying $1,000 for skins. They do not care about you, right? And even if they ostensibly half-assedly want to put some effort into attracting new players, the amount of like layers and layers of expansion packs and complexities are really off-putting. And so now like Soulframe is not technically out yet. You have to pay money to kind of get into this like prelude beta. They're not going to wipe character progression though, so you're kind of just in this kind of like chill game. It's very good. The flip side is, I think what I want, and this is shameful, I think when I say I want an MMO, I want a game that is like structurally identical to the original World of Warcraft. And I played World of Warcraft Classic, and I'm really glad that's a thing. But it's just a new theme, a new lore, a new content, new questing, you know. But like effectively the same thing that I can just like zone out, click buttons 1 through 9, watch numbers go up, do boring quests that don't require me to think very much, and watch a show in the background. Like I want that again, but I already played all of WoW Classic, and like later versions of World of Warcraft deviated so dramatically from like that kind of like leveling grind. And every new game is so focused on the end game and getting there as fast as possible because that's where you can monetize whales, that like none of these free to play games, none of these other kind of like ostensibly MMO, massively multiplayer games like have the really long level grind anymore. And that's all I want. I just want to get XP. I want to level up. So I may have talked myself into trying Final Fantasy 14 for like the 30th time, but I don't think I like that game. And there's not many to choose from. Between really liking classical MMOs and liking VR gaming, I've made this bed. Also still playing Outer Worlds 2. It's going great. I really like it. A lot of tutorialization, a lot of like kind of like the ratio of me having to listen to people talking at the beginning of the game to actually playing the game was too high at the beginning for me. But now that I'm like 10 hours in, on the second planet, kind of more, the game loop is exposing itself. It is extremely similar to Avowed. So there's lots of explore the map, find side quests, collect a bunch of side quests, then sort of like check them off a checklist as you gradually clear the map area. That is the kind of loop that I like. The story's fun enough. The character interactions are good. The combat is like, it does the thing all of these games fucking do, where the combat's really hard at first because you fucking suck, and then you get incrementally stronger over time, and then the combat's too easy. Feels like the game should get progressively more challenging with time, and these never work out that way. But as somebody who really likes skill checks, like I really love in a game when I'm in a dialogue tree and, oh wow, if my speech level was 5, I'd be able to say this cool thing and maybe solve this puzzle. Or if my hacking skill was 7, or if I had this perk that made me a charlatan and a more fluent liar, then I'd be able to get out of this situation. I took a trait for my character when I created the character called dumb, as in stupid. And it had a benefit. I forget the benefit of being dumb. There is one, but it limits you to just like, you're not allowed to take 5 entire skill categories. You have to ban them from yourself. So it kind of focuses where you spend your skill points. But another funny thing about being dumb in this game is that certain number of skill checks are available to you if you are dumb. So I did not have the skills to actually solve a particular quest problem yesterday. And I was running into a situation where I might have had to resort to combat or a suboptimal quest outcome. But because I was dumb, I was able to like do something really stupid. And I was looking at this physical logbook, and it's like, try licking the paper. So you lick the paper and you realize like, oh, the lettering just comes right off, because it's been doctored. Like somebody had erased the original records here. And then that was enough to like clear that particular quest, right? So having skill checks like that, like so many sources, you can get them from traits or perks or skills, that really substantially change the solution to problems and the flow of dialogue, right? It tricks the brain into thinking that your decisions matter when, of course, they do not. But that's what we're here for, is just the illusion of control over this meaningless existence. And now, the mailbag, so we can hear a little bit about some of our favorite listeners' meaningless lives.
You've got mail.
You too can join me in the celebration of how meaningless our existences are. Hit me up at a podcast at searles.co and I'll read your email. And then I'll do other stuff too. Yeah, I actually got a good haul of mail last couple of weeks. Unfortunately, now I'm at the point where my sinuses have refilled themselves with stuff and getting a little gravelly. I think this is, what are we at? 2 hours. Apparently that's beyond my limit. I'm on the mend, but my stamina is not fully recovered yet. As I try not to cough into this microphone too directly. I am losing the ability to speak, however, so I'll try to stay on task. Aaron writes in, Starlink is baller. You won't regret it. They don't suck. About the customer service almost seeming intentionally incompetent, I ran into that directly with one of my companies. We created a way to skip waiting on hold. You open your phone and then click Verizon and customer service and you go back to your life. In the background, we start launching calls into their system spaced apart because we know some won't make it. And we played a recording for your next caller, press 1 for the agent who we'd reach eventually. The recording was the actual lady who did the AT&T voice. And she created the recording for $40 on a voice platform we found. That's funny. This sounds like Get Human. I don't know if Aaron's talking about working at Get Human, G-E-T Human. But they had a service like this, and there were a handful of other apps and services like this, basically like to get a human right away instead of waiting on hold. Anyways, it actually worked most of the time. But the company didn't make it because on the one side, people didn't really pay enough for apps back in 2011. And it turns out the companies didn't have the problem we thought we were solving for them. We tried to sell them a way to have people not feel like they were waiting on hold. And they said, yeah, but we know they're on hold. They should go to the website. Yeah, this isn't a problem companies really care to solve. I think increasingly, long hold times have become a tool that companies use to reduce customer service burden. Like adding, this is not directly related, but it's of a piece with any sort of excessive cost cutting mindset. Another example of this being the federal government starved of resources, or at least artificially sometimes constrained in terms of being able to be generous with resources. Is it? Oh God, I don't want to get the name wrong because I'm gonna do it. I'm just not. I refuse to say this name incorrectly. I'm going to click through to the Amazon. Yes, okay, I did have the name right. Annie Lowry, author of spouse to Ezra Klein, but like author of many good books and real research, like Give People Money, talks about this in terms of a time tax, like that, like the hassle needed to get government services is so high that usage goes down, which then has the effect of saving money for the government, right? And so like a lot of the stuff that was put into the calculation for the big beautiful tax bill that the Republicans passed was actually not literally reducing Medicare, like in terms of how much was going to get spent into block grants, but rather in increasing the degree to which it is onerous to draw that money and to take advantage of those services. And as a result, the CBO was able to budget it like, yes, usage will go down, which will save us money indirectly, right? Long hold times are the same thing, but just in the corporate sphere. It's like you want people to have to sit on hold for hours because eventually they give up and they just learn to just live their, shitty existences. Because dealing with a shitty product or a shitty service is better than dealing with a shitty product while holding a phone to your head. Matt writes in, Breaking Change Wrapped, as in like Spotify Wrapped. So he's shared a screenshot with me of what appears to be his Spotify Wrapped of his end of the year summary. Number one go-tos for podcasts. And apparently I was Matt's number one podcast in Breaking Change. Second place being Mostly Technical, a show that I've heard is good. Remote Ruby also gets a mention down at number 4. Matt writes, 25 episodes at 3-hour runtime beats out 52 episodes at 1-hour runtime. Proving once again that quantity does beat out quality. I make one commitment to you here, and it's going to be that I will probably never be on the other side of that ledger. You get quantity with me. I do not warrant that anything that I say on this program is fit for purpose. Jesse writes in with a SFF gaming rig. So I guess I did talk about this a bit more last week. So, no, this is actually a response to a little clip I made, like a time-lapse video I made of me putting together this thing. All I needed was the, yakety sax like song of like, hilariously assembling and then unassembling the thing. Unfortunately, I didn't have the rights to that. Jesse writes, such a coincidence. I just pulled the trigger on my own small form factor gaming PC components, and they're arriving shortly. I was able to get my hands on a Form D T1 case. I don't know what that is. The Form D T1 is only 10 liters compared to the 15 liters of my apparently quite girthy N-Case M2. So 10 liters is very small. My, for context, my Tom Bin Synapse bag that I travel the world in, comes in 2 sizes, 19 liters and 25 liters. And in theory, yeah, I could probably cram my PC into that 19 liter bag. It would be really snug. So 10 liters, like that's not going to fit my 5090. No way. I don't believe it. So Jesse writes, I also got an all-in-one water cooler, like a water radiator. They're often just abbreviated now to AIOs. I also have one of those in mine. He says, I had to replace one of its fans for a slimmer one and then track down the right screws for mounting it to the radiator. Let's hope people on Reddit know what they're talking about. These same people are also suggesting I get custom cables at exact lengths to make building in such a small case easier. I almost resorted to that. Like, the reason that I struggled to fit everything in my case at the end, and like I had cables that were like bumping up against the fans. Fortunately, I was able to put fan guards over the fans so that they were undisturbed. But the problem is that you end up with a power supply that is like a super fucking, it's a small power supply, but it's, over provisioned in terms of like the amount of cables that you can connect to it. And the cables it ships with are all very long in case you're plugging it into a large system, which then means you have to kind of like coil it around and snake it around all this other shit. And no matter how good a job you do managing that cabling, like that, the space has to come from somewhere else. And so cramming that thing in there really took like a significant amount of pressure just to close it in place long enough so I could screw it in. Like the entire system is under pressure, and it's because the cables want to expand out. Even when they're zip tied appropriately, like you're managing a problem, you're not solving it. And so it crossed my mind that I might actually have to order custom power cables. And at that point, because the power cables, like they differ from make to make. So anyway, he says, please talk about the process of building it into the show. Any tips and tricks? Here's a tip and trick. Be wary of third-party power cables. If you have a Corsair PSU, don't buy generic Amazon cables. Try to find something that Corsair would actually like either sell you or recommend, even if it's expensive, in terms of alternate lengths. Same goes for Asus or whoever your PSU maker is, because as these power draws have become more demanding, both in terms of the amount of watts that a gaming PC pulls, which is quickly hitting the 1500 watt limit for most, wall outlets. Two things have changed. One is like the number of proprietary extensions or pseudo standard extensions to what these cables like actually carry, with most famous example being of like 5090s that require these 600-watt cables or daisy chained 4-way splitters literally melting and catching fire because there's just way too much going through the pipes. Like at that point, you want to make sure that you're using the warranted cable. God forbid it happens to you. The other is like there are is ACPI 3.1 some new specification for like the actual quality of that power signal as it moves, and newer hardware is going to, if not already, require that the power coming from the PSU be conditioned to more exacting current and voltage constraints. So like, that the sine wave be within a particular, I'm not an electrical engineer. I don't know an ohm from a other jargon word, but anyway, no other advice other than just like plan a weekend around it. It's a lot of effort. Building a big gigantic gaming PC where you got room to move around is super easy. It turns out, like getting it crammed in there it does feel like you're building a ship in a bottle. It's fun, but you're not going to want to get in there again and unless you're a sicko and like redo this. And that's why I triple checked everything that I did at every single step, because to go back several steps, you have to literally disassemble everything to get back to, like, in my case, that PSU. That was like the first thing I put on the board. If I had to change that out because of Coil Whine, I'm going to fucking blow my brains out. Not going to actually blow my brains out. I'm going to sigh long and hard and wonder, is it worth it to me? John writes in, I miss the old GitHub. I was thinking about emailing you to get your thoughts on GitHub in general, and then I saw this post about Zig, which is a project I'm not familiar with, but I saw this article as well. Zig apparently zagged, migrating from GitHub to Codeberg, which is not to be confused with Zoidberg from Futurama, and decided now was the time. Ooh. Oh, the time to email me, not to actually leave GitHub. Yeah. I miss the old days of using GitHub when it still felt super fresh and cool, and projects were migrating over from SourceForge. Remember SourceForge? Now it's all about AI and everything else, and the site is leggy and a chore to use. They've also totally dropped the ball on stewardship of NPM. NPM was a hot mess beforehand, John. It continues to be a hot mess. At least now there's like less drama surrounding NPM and the people involved. I got to meet a lot of people who were involved in NPM, like very, very nice people throughout. It was a complicated time. Yeah. I understood that the centralization of GitHub was always at odds with Git in general, but at the same time, it's been fun to have GitHub as the place to go for discovering cool open source projects. I will say, as somebody who knew a lot of early days hubbers, that the explore page, like using GitHub to actually explore and find new shit on GitHub, it almost became a joke eventually because no one fucking knew what to do with it. It's like an impossible amount of like low signal crap. Like you could curate it and maybe generate some stuff, but like you would need a full-blown editorial team to even figure out what goes on the explore page. So when you say that GitHub was a fun place to go to discover cool open source projects, I'm sure somebody from like 2010s era GitHub would have loved to talk to you about like what the fuck you're talking about. Cause like that was not, at least everyone that I ever talked to internally, it was never their perception. They were like, who wants to fucking take another crack at the explore page, which still sucks and does nothing for us and everyone hates, and just their own telemetry apparently indicated everyone just ignored. Now you could discover cool stuff and then see it link to a particular GitHub repository. That happened all the time. But I always felt like GitHub was shit at discoverability. And honestly, like so many people are eager to link to their GitHub repos anyway that it's not really a big deal. I'm not looking for a feed. I'm looking for a feed of cool GitHub repos to check out. Like I'm looking for I'm looking for a TikTok of other people's AI slop videos, right? It's just the stuff that the average person is putting into GitHub is so hyper specific to their situation and unlikely to be relevant to me. that the idea of discoverability being part of that service never made sense to me. Anyway, sorry, that was an aside. John continues, I feel like that will be missed if things slowly fragment out to other hosts over time. Anyways, I'd love to hear what you think about it all. If more people get off GitHub, the biggest pain in the ass will be that I have to think about where things are. Just like with Twitter. It's like, nice thing about Twitter being like the thing, the place where things get posted is like, oh, shoot, this subway's late, this train's late. There's probably a status updater account and I can just search Twitter. Or if people are talking about this, why TSA is slow at DTW today, I'll check Twitter and then I'll see the story, right? And then with the fragmentation, now that's no longer true necessarily. And that's a pain in the dick because like now I got to like suffer with the not knowing what the internet's doing at any given moment because there's no one authoritative place that's like a good enough search to answer questions like that are like real time. And if GitHub was no longer the dominant place where people were hosting projects, then I would have to like look in multiple places. But like I just said, like most of the time it's just like they link to some other thing. And yeah, I don't know. I mean, I kind of think it doesn't matter a great deal. I think what hosting service you're on matters a lot if you are a maintainer of it or a contributor, because like you need the account, you need to like, you know, you got your notifications, you got your issues and your settings and all that jazz. And having like if you do all your projects on GitHub, great, that's nice. And if you do all of them on Codeberg, which I'd never heard of, that's probably nice. Or if they're all on GitLab, that's kind of nice. But if you're a maintainer across projects across 5 of these things, maintaining 5 different accounts, it's 5 different kinds of notifications, it's 5 different, like, you know, just like, it's just more shit to keep up with. And that's not to say that like notification aggregation in GitHub is any good. But like they're all going to have different stories around CI and different checks and different other things and different integrations. Because at the end of the day, it's like, the thing about GitHub was always going to be, it's like, if that's the authoritative place where the project lives, it's going to be primarily a project management tool in terms of what the product becomes. And then in terms of what the platform becomes, it's an integration to everything else that needs your code, which is a lot of things. And so as you multiply the number of those authoritative sources, you have N project management tools to contend with. And you've got, N times M number of integrations to deal with to all these other services that want to read the source code. And I suspect that if you rely on any of those, that's probably the biggest deal breaker because most people only bother to build a GitHub API right now. And honestly, if things were to fragment a lot more, people would probably just stop offering those APIs altogether or reach for them less in terms of other services that tack on. Yeah, I don't know. It matters for maintainers who are split across multiple things. I don't think it matters for just about anyone else. And here's the secret, John. Here's the real reason it doesn't matter for anyone else. To a meaningful approximation, to significant digits of precision, approximately nobody reads the code. Nobody fucking cares about the code. 99.99999% of traffic to GitHub repos is to the README. And then the remaining 5 zeros into 1% is to search issues to see if somebody else has solved your problem or has your problem. That is how the vast majority of people hitting these sites use them. And most of them are not logged in. Right? Probably only 1% of people at github.com. Because like it's like the number of hobbyist and niche things from 3D printing to gaming to like all sorts of stuff that lands you at GitHub as just a general person on the internet is only the 1% even need the account, right? Because then you're engaging. As a result, I don't think this matters very much in the grand scheme of things. James writes in, asking about Posse Party's code base. He responded. He was on the wait list, it looks like, for Posse Party. Sorry to out you, James. He says, this code base is fascinating. Thank you. It's either a compliment or a threat. I was about to submit a PR to swap the string-based enums for integer ones because it would save from defining all the open ? etc. methods. Even though I had a strong... Now, this is very in the weeds, and even for me, I kind of had to jog my memory of what he's talking about. Okay. Even though I had a strong sense that that was a deliberate choice, at the very least, I thought a pull request might make for an interesting discussion to shine a light on that choice. ... But then I noticed all of the custom database constraints in your schema RB. And then having read through your agents.md file, which is my instruction to Codex CLI in terms of they're the ones who built the second half of the application, I already had a good sense that this wasn't a typical Rails application, but I'm hoping you'll post more about some of the architectural choices inside. I'm looking forward to reading more of this code. Thanks for sharing. I actually had James follow up and offer up some like specifics. I kind of gave him some quick hit reactions to those questions that he had or things that he thought were interesting. And I might follow up with like a screencast or something. In fact, James, thank you for the email. I just agreed with Aaron Patterson. I'm going to do his, he does a stream called Pairing with Aaron on Fridays. I'm going to join him for his live stream on the 19th. And maybe we'll time it so he can do the pun sort with me for Breaking Change, shortly thereafter. And for our pairing session, I'm going to walk through the Posse Party code base and just kind of highlight some of the silly stuff that I did. Most of these things are not things I thought up for Posse Party. They're just things I've been gradually baking into my Rails applications for years and years. And every time I start a new Rails app, I've got sort of like the Searle stack of shit that I like to kind of drag in the door with me. And each time is an opportunity to discard things that might not be relevant anymore, which is how I've gradually gotten closer and closer to just the vanilla Rails stack. But still, my style is totally idiosyncratic and works really well for me. I don't know if it works well for anyone else, but also no one else is doing it because I never talk about it. So I did want Posse Party's code base to be, even though it's not under an open source license, I wanted it to be public so that people could look at it. So yeah, check it out. Lots of weird stuff. If you go through Posse Party's code base, or even if you just pull it down and then ask an agent to like identify weird shit in it, you might learn a thing or two, or feel free to email me, podcast@searles.co, and we'll talk about it. So yeah, I'll link to Aaron's YouTube channel so you can make plans to watch our live stream. Matt writes in, The Bear, Season 5. I was also under the impression that Season 4 was the final season of The Bear, and the final season scenes left me equally unsatisfied. But it is not. There is a Season 5 already in production. Reading online, many others Mandela affected, meaning to say they had a similarly imagined memory that Season 4 was the final season, so don't feel too bad. Oddly enough, somebody else told me the exact same thing at dinner the night before I got this email. Former colleague of mine, Kevin, we were out to dinner and he's like, no, actually, like a lot of people thought it was the end, but it's not. They're doing another one. Okay. I'm still not sure that makes me feel any better about this show. I think it's like, after a certain point, I realized this is a way for me in my Apple TV to just click a button and then suddenly be transported to like every holiday dinner at like a extended family function that was awkward or uncomfortable for 20 to 45 minutes. And like, it can be really well executed and also kind of just not worth it. Once it wasn't about Italian beef anymore, what got me was the Italian beef and the music. And now it's less of the music and almost no Italian beef. So that's about that. All right, we'll call it there. this has been version 48 of the podcast. Sorry if it sucks. I blame the fact that I'm still recovering from surgery, and also my lack of skill and attention and just disinterest in trying really hard at this. I blame a lot of things. The important thing is that, it's not my fault that I'm this way. It's yours.